And the amended rules, the Sabin amendment's very clear. The game will end at the end of the combat phase of this turn. It does not end immediately, as was at least, I don't know, the main case or a sub-case. I think in the main case, as it were, in the rules as written. In the amendments, we go through and finish all the combats first, and that's what we're going to continue to do. What happened here then? So it is, I did total it up, and it is 40 points. So that means that all other things being equal, by the end of this turn, the Allies will have won a strategic victory. They'll, as we might imagine, they've done very well. So, moving on. The Prussians moved forward to occupy the space that was vacated by the destroyed French unit, by the cuirassiers. And we've just got a few combats left. Down here we can see the Prussians are getting stuck in, and now this unit here is indeed surrounded. So there's a good prospect there of the destruction of that unit. So it's 3-1. Factors involved. We've already limited the attacking Prussian infantry to 3-1 odds because they are infantry attacking cavalry without any attacking cavalry, isn't it? Was it? If the defender equals cavalry and there's no attacking cavalry. Right, let's see what we got. All right, so we got a 3-1 with a 3 is defender retreat. They're surrounded by zone of control. They can't, so therefore they are destroyed as well. So we can take those off, that off, and take those off. So now the French have lost 41, and the Prussians can follow up as they see fit. And as we can see, the two Prussian infantry divisions have moved into not only that hex that was occupied by the enemy, but also the adjacent hex, which is allowed under the amendments. You can advance into a hex which is both adjacent to where the enemy was and adjacent to where you attacked from. So therefore they've both come forward here, deliberately coming into the zone of control of this unit, which will mean now that this unit here will be compelled in its turn to attack the Prussians, which gives them a problem because let's see, what is it? A shielded unit in a building need not attack, but a unit in a building like them does need to attack. So there we are. Let's see, what have we got? All right, so moving on, we've got up here. Let's see, they have got an exit if they have to retreat, and they've got an exit if they have to retreat as well. Oh, that's right, I didn't want to miss something up here, and that was, I'm going to do this one here. Someone was obliged to engage that unit there, and that's why the Prussian artillery came up to here. So Prussian artillery is going to attack that unit there. Now, often, but when that sort of thing has come up before, depending on the circumstances, it's been, well, there's no point because nothing can happen. But here we have a 1-2, and one of the possible, one of the possible results of that is defender retreat. So, yeah, and wait a minute. Yeah, so I do have to adjudicate it because the attack has to be done. And, oh, no, wait a minute. Bombarding artillery do not concern themselves with negative results. That's right. But they might get a defender retreat. That's right. So let's see what happens. Well, it's not this time. It's 1-2 with a 5, which is attacker retreat. But they were bombarding, so they can ignore that. Right, so nothing happens to the guard artillery, which is there. Okay. So now we have this situation here. Let's go ahead and roll that. Now here we do have to remember to add 1 because that's Lambert's infantry here attacking, so they're no longer shielded, so they add +1 to the die. And let's see what we get out of that. So that's 4, 1-1 with a 4 is attacker retreat. Okay. So these chaps are going to have to retreat. Let's sort that out. Okay, 1 minute. Okay, so that's where we ended up. Lambert retreated to here, and the French wisely elected not to follow up to that position there, where they would be surrounded quite thoroughly. Then up here, we've got these chaps attacking. Again, they have... no, sorry, they're clearly shielded. They're shielded, yeah, right. So they're attacking there 1-to-1. So it's just that's a straightforward 1-to-1 attack. The enemy is not surrounded by zones of control. So it's a 50-50 as to who retreats, and it will be the attacker who retreats, which is interesting, actually, isn't it? Of course, because, let's see, they were obliged to do that attack because of their position. But yeah, this is quite significant because now well, it would have been significant if the game had gone any longer, I suppose. What am I saying? Yeah. They've lost their shielded position. Let's sort that out. All right, so there's the result of the combat there. So these chaps were pushed back. As we can see, they retreated to there. The French didn't follow up. And that is the end of the combat phase. So that is the end of the Allies' turn 4. They have lost 41 points now. So that's it. They are taken to have been routed, it's taken that they would at this point rout, and the Allies have won a strategic victory. To rub salt into the wound, as we remember, we can see that the Allied losses are one unit, the smallest unit of cavalry, 1-5, Dutch Belgians, plucky chaps they were, stuck their necks out, and all I can say, what I would say to those chaps is dank wel. Why not? So now it's all setting in. So the game's over, and now we're going to have a think so we can come up with some sort of thought-provoking summary and conclusions and that sort of thing. All right, so here we are at the end of the adventure, and as we say, the Allies have achieved a strategic victory. Points-wise, we've got 41 versus 1, so an absolute crushing victory against the French. And so in summary, I thoroughly enjoyed it. This is the first time I've ever played this game. I've never played it using the rules as published. First time I've ever played it is this session with the Sabin amendments. And I am absolutely very pleased, having used the Sabin amendments, which it would have been a very, very different game otherwise. Would have been much more... it would have been much simpler, yes. But it would have been more simplistic as well. One imagines things like, the artillery advancing after combat, that sort of thing. Not having a lot of the subtlety around the Anglo-Allied positions, the shielded factor, or not having the subtlety of the business of attacking cavalry or being attacked by cavalry, and so forth and so on. Yes, there were quite a number of extra rules, but I don't think I would want to play the game unless it was just purely as a matter of research. I wouldn't want to play the game without the Sabin amendments. Okay, so let's see. It felt, the key thing to me is it did feel realistic. That the French were having a very difficult time, pounding against the Anglo-Allies and not making progress. I suppose you can look at it and you can say, well, let's see, La Haye Sainte did not fall Hougoumont did not fall. And obviously, it's like a question of the moves that I made. I'm not Napoleon, so the moves that I made, and then also, of course, the roll of the die. I've made no analysis of, whether either side got unusually favourable results. And I'm not about to go back through the video and calculate that, because I do this for pleasure. I'm not a scientist performing research. As I say, it felt realistic from the not very much I know about the battle. Well, I mean, I've read a few books, but I'm certainly no expert. One thing I did miss that was in Philip Sabin's YouTube video of when he played it through using his bespoke playset using over 400 painted Airfix figures, which is rather splendid. Speaking of which, 20 mil. But anyway, what Philip Sabin had chosen to do was, whenever referring to the units, he brought rather more colour to the situation by referring to each unit by its divisional commander. And the more I play, especially I think playing solitaire as well, or solo, sorry, is that in order to sort of get the richest experience, it really does help if you can not only have access to the names of commanders, so that they're printed on the counters if possible, but also that when you're playing the game, of course, when I'm playing games, I'm recording a lot of it on video. So, but of course, even when I'm playing the game by myself, I do tend to sort of talk out loud. I've warned my family that that's what I'm doing, but I will speak out loud as I'm making the moves. And I find that if you are using the names of the commanders, it very much more comes alive, as opposed to, well, I've got a 6-4 unit over here on the left, and then over on the right, I've got a 6-4 unit, which is being attacked by a 4-6 unit. It just comes down to numbers, and you're pushing pieces of cardboard around. And I also try, when possible, to just sort of, to not be using sort of generic, well, I've got these guys here, and they're attacking these guys over here, and my guys here. I try to get into a little bit of character, so it's like, well, these chaps here. Although, of course, I do say that about the French as well, probably. The French chaps over here. But more specifically, I prefer to refer to the infantry and the cavalry and the artillery and the light cavalry and the heavy cavalry and the dragoons and so forth. And so what I plan to do with this is, especially if I was going to do this again as a video presentation, is to do what Philip Sabin did. And I'm sure he's got the names of the commanders in his head. I certainly don't. So I would have to produce some sort of list that had the commander for each counter, basically, and have a list handy, because I had looked at printing these over again and making the pieces over again, because of course this is a play set that I fabricated myself from downloadable resources, and I had looked about the possibility of printing the names of the commanders onto the counters, and it could just about be done, but the text is awfully small. So anyway, that's a thought, but I did like that touch in Philip Sabin's video, made the thing sort of come alive. Anyway, so the actual playing of the game felt very realistic, and I was very satisfied with that. Now, on to the next point. My question is this: what chance does Napoleon realistically have of winning the game? We can imagine it's rather unlikely that he's going to win the battle, but of course we know as wargamers that the victory conditions can be fashioned in such a way that you can win the game without necessarily winning the battle. Typically it might be that you do better than the person did historically, that sort of thing. And indeed, Philip Sabin has, a system giving the French game victory if the Allies have lost at least 30 strength points and the French fewer than 40 after any combat phase, or if the Allies fail to gain a strategic victory. And remember, in this game, the Allies definitely got a strategic victory and then some. So the French can win the game, certainly. They can win it that way, or of course they can just hands down beat the Allies by causing the Allies to have 40 strength points of losses and they don't, and that sort of thing. But how likely is it that a French player could win? Well, the thing is, I mean, I can compare notes on at least one instance, and that is, of course, Philip Sabin's game that he himself played on YouTube, as I've just described. And I don't remember the numbers in that game off the top of my head, but I do remember that, the French certainly racked up points by scoring Allied losses. So it was nowhere near as almost totally one-sided as this game was. In fact, because the French got just that one strength point, you might say, well, that's an edge case. That's just noise. It was a complete defeat in every sense of the word. So, but clearly, the man himself was playing the game, and it can be done. The French can certainly cause Allied losses. It can be done, so I suppose I'd have to have another crack at the game to sort of accumulate data on that to sort of see. Okay, well, how much of a chance does Napoleon actually have of kicking Wellington's butt? So, well, there's the question there. Now, that brings us on to the next point, which is that I do indeed look forward to playing the game again. I'm not sure. I mean, of course, a good way to do that is when you've got it all set up like I do, and the rules are all fresh in my mind. So it would be, well, let's play it again now. But it's a few days into the new year of 2024, which means it's not long after Christmas, and a number of titles arrived at Christmas thanks to Santa and various other conspiring forces. And so I have got some other games that I'm itching to get out onto the table and also to bring to my channel by means of the medium of the motion picture. So yeah, we'll see about that. I think I probably will be moving on to something else after this one, but I will pack this all lovingly away in a special box that I've saved for it. And that brings us in a rather smooth segue to point number 4, which is, I believe I'm correct in saying that this is the first board war game that I've played where the entire thing has been a print and play production done by myself, downloading marvelously created and freely given resources from the web. Of course, it was a bit easier in this instance in the sense that this game was being given away for free. So I think I can be fairly confident that I'm not stepping on anyone's toes in terms of copyright by printing it off and playing it. So it's so, for example, on Board Game Geek, as we know, for example, you'll have sets of counters on there that are clearly from copyrighted games, and I just don't know what sort of point of view, on average, the game publishers take. What point of view they take with that sort of thing, because of course if people do print them and play them and they put them on YouTube, then they're actually in a way sort of advertising their game, even though they may have built it in violation of copyright, I suppose. But I don't know, I don't want to get into that. I'm not a bloody lawyer, for God's sake. So moving on, yes, the whole print and play thing was actually rather fun and didn't take too long. I think there are pretty much 100 counters in play here. Although, of course, it was only later that I realised that with the Sabin amendments, as we said before, all these counters here along the back row are not required for the game. Yes, so I could have saved a bit of time by not printing them, and the only way I will use those is if I play the game Napoleon at Waterloo with the rules as originally published, which, as I've said, I probably won't. Or if I think in the Sabin amendments, the Good Emeritus Professor Herr Doctor Sabin speaks of, I believe, never using these and I believe he does talk about the possibility of, some other options, like allowing the Prussians to, I don't think arrive any earlier, but not at all, for example, which of course would help the French rather, or alternatively allowing the jolly old Imperial Guard to move earlier than the fourth turn, which is when they move. They're allowed to move under the amendments. So I'm pretty sure that even in the amendments, the Sabin amendments, these units are never used. So okay, just trying to keep it clear here. All right. What else? Oh, before I forget, yes, I did want to mention, obviously, the game that I played here was Napoleon at Waterloo SPI, which is the work of Jim Dunnigan, what would he be? I mean, sort of one of the founding father, possibly? No, one of the founding fathers of the whole concept of board war games. That's right, because you've got Charles Roberts and Frank Chadwick and people like that. Okay. So thanks to Jim Dunnigan, and of course thanks to Philip Sabin for the amendments and for making the video, which was the thing that got my attention about this game in the first place. I had heard about it before, but I'd never been particularly interested in playing it. And then also to, let's see, the counter set. I'm very neglectful that I forgot to mention this. The counter set is an alternate set of counters that was uploaded to Board Game Geek by Pedro Baradas. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing anything there. Pedro Baradas. And then the map, which was, I don't think it was altered in any way, but it was uploaded to Board Game Geek as vector graphics by Ryan H. And so thanks to both of those, clearly they are gentlemen, yes, but both of those gentlemen for that. Well, thanks to everyone for making the print and play materials available. And if I didn't mention it, the key breakthrough for me was to print all the counters onto a single sheet. It was an A4 sheet, which is a single label, which you can get. And then you just take that, attach it to some. I really, really like the fact that I chose to attach it to some really rather thick card. And because the previous game that I played was SPI's Normandy from 1971, where I had I actually had an unpunched game, which I punched in order to play the game, and that had spectacularly thin counters, which you try and pick it up with. At least these are not particularly good, but whenever I was trying to pick up the counters, they'd go bing, they flip off all over the place. And then, as opposed to these counters, which, as we can see, I don't know if I can keep that in focus or I can make it focus on that. Can I do that? There we go. I could if I had a free hand, but as you can see, it's pretty darn thick. And I can't remember where that counter came from, but I've taken all the photographs I already want to take, so there we go. So yes, put it on the really thick card and then get a very robust pair of scissors I used to cut it out. I tried using a craft knife, but it started tearing up the labels, so I didn't like that. So I just did it with the old scissors. And one nice thing about that is that because they're not punched by a sort of, what's it called, a die cutter, it meant that all the corners were nice and straight, and I didn't have to clip the corners, if you see what I mean. So yes, and it was fun to sort of make the little extra bits as well, like the little markers that I made for indicating shielded, which I would have been hopelessly lost if I hadn't done that. And Philip Sabin talks about turning the units to rotating the units perhaps through 90 degrees to indicate that they're shielded. But that clashes with my system that I use in every game, where I rotate units when I move them and do various things with them, like retreat them and advance them and so forth. So the tiny little squares have done their job marvelously. And let's see, print and play, done that. Going through my notes, okay. And yes, well, I hope you've enjoyed it. I think that's about it. So okay, moving on to the next game now, whatever that might be. And I hope you've enjoyed it. And as usual, I say, here's to it.